Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services, Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, and Gettles High Desert Mechanical. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got two fantastic guests for you this week. Later in the program, I'm joined by the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association, Rob McKinley, to speak about how he got started as an AIA umpire, what rule changes we might see this upcoming season, break down the mentorship of umpiring, what mistakes young umpires make, and how he prepares for a game. And when we return from break, I sit down with the coaches of the competitive robotics team, the CocoNuts, Christine Sapio and Dave Thompson, to talk about how they got the program started at Coconino High School, break down international competition, what opportunities are available for students, and preview the ins and outs of their upcoming game, Rapid React. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettles High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettles High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Gettles High Desert Mechanical and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by the coaches of the CocoNuts at Coconino High School, Christine Sapio and Coach Dave Thompson. Thank you both for coming on the show. Coach Christine, I'm very sorry I messed up your last name. I promise I have it written down.
It's all good.
Well, we're both very, very happy to. I'm very happy to have you both here on the show. We have not at all talked about robotics on the program before. I know my high school had a robotics program. My middle school had a robotics program. Robotics has been around forever. The CocoNuts specifically have been around since 2007. They were started by these two fine people right here. They've won multiple awards in FIRST Robotics, including the Inspire Award, the Engineering Inspiration Award, and they are 10-time winners of the Regional Chairman's Award. So I don't know, first and foremost, why has it been this long since we've gotten you guys on the show if you're winning all these awards? And secondly, let's talk about the origins of that program. How did the CocoNuts get started? Either of you can start.
Well, you know, Philip, one of the things, and I think the FIRST Robotics is the best kept secret in the world. And just like you're starting to find out, is you're seeing that it's amazing what these kids have done and what this program is capable of doing. And yet people don't know about it because it's just the hardest thing. You know, when you think of sports, you go, football, basketball, and, baseball, all these things have had histories for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so what's happened is robotics, which has come on so strong and is such a huge part of our lives, we just don't realize, we don't even think and associate that with sports. But as you're saying, it's a major sport. And in fact, it's the hardest sport you're ever going to love. And it's a sport for the mind. And that's what we like to coin it. So the CocoNuts have been around for 15 years, our 15th year. And I'm going to have Christine kind of tell you a little bit about how we started.
So it's a pretty good story. So Dave actually was a science teacher here at Coconino High School for more than 20 years. And I wandered into his classroom one day as his student teacher, and was lucky enough to actually get hired the semester after my student teaching. And Dave gets an email one day from Ann Kirkpatrick, who was at the time one of our state representatives, and said, how come Coconino doesn't have a first robotics team? And Dave did a little searching and was like, I don't even know what this is, and looked it up, found out that there was a kickoff event that day down in Phoenix, wanders into my classroom and says, hey, Christine, do you want to go check out this robot thing? That's literally what happened. And we left about a half hour later, drove down to Phoenix and went to a kickoff event where we were immediately just overwhelmed by how welcoming and how excited these kids were and everything. People kept coming up to us and saying, do you want to start a team right now? All you need is $6,000 and a few kids. And we're like, wait, I don't even know what this is yet. So we went to a competition and we're totally blown away. All right. It was played on a field about the size of a basketball court, and these 120-pound machines were playing this game, and the kids were totally off the wall excited. So imagine the energy that you get at a sporting event, but then combine it with a science fair and then a rock concert. And that's the kind of energy that one of these events has. And so we drove back and we're like, we totally need to start this at our school. This would be great for our school. So we got permission from the superintendent and we started our team the following fall.
Now, I think something should be made very clear before we continue our conversation about robotics. This type of robotics is not what some people, including myself, may have assumed robotics is, which is battle bots, which is a thing, but is not what we're talking about.
Exactly.
This particular form of robotics is a completely different. So can we talk a little bit about those differences just to clear them up for some of those who are still unfamiliar with what we're particularly talking about?
Absolutely. So the organization that we're a part of is called FIRST, which stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. And FIRST was actually founded under the idea that kids love sports, and sports are great for kids. So the whole foundation of FIRST is this idea that let's make a sports model, but have kids build robots to compete and have those robots be the athletes. So there are programs for kids as young as 4 all the way up through when they graduate from high school. At the youngest grade levels, they're building robots out of Legos to complete a series of tasks. In the middle school and high school level is when they start to get to compete head to head. And that kit looks more like let's say more like an erector set, kind of a smaller robot kit. By the time they're at the varsity level, which is what we compete in, they're building a 120, 150 pound machine from scratch in about 2 months to play a brand new, unique game that gets released every single year.
Now, obviously, there was a brand new game released this year, which we'll talk about. But let's talk a little bit about some of those games that you guys have seen in the past. I got a chance to take a look at what the new game is. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's very much objective based. Am I correct in saying that is very much objective based? I know the one that we watched had more to do with sort of scoring points, while there was a hanging aspect to it. There was a putting a cargo into a receptacle for points as well. So the point is that it's object based. So can we talk a little bit about, before we get into the new game, can we talk a little bit about some of the other games and activities you guys have participated with the CocoNuts in the past? Coach Thompson.
Yeah, we've had so many different games out there. Philip, we've played games where we've had to storm a castle and actually launch rocks, which were these foam rocks up into the castle. And once we got we had to cross over obstacles like drawbridge and portcullis that you put defenses up for the other bots to have to go over. We played a steampunk type game called Steamworks, and we had to actually get a flying ship moving by putting gears on it and picking them up and actually placing them and then starting to rotate them. We played games where we've had to launch frisbees across the field and almost playing a like ultimate frisbee. And then after that, climbing up a pyramid. We've done games that over the years where we've had to play soccer, actually play basketball against other robots. It's amazing what the kids have actually had to come up with, every year being a unique challenge. But like you say, objective in the sense that every time you would score certain points. by scoring those points, you actually are ranking yourself up. And the CocoNuts, our FRC team 2486, has done incredibly well through the years, amazingly well, where we compete at not just a regional or a national level, but actually at an international level. And we have been fortunate enough as a team to actually go to the World Championships every year of our existence, which no other team out there has done.
Well, that's what I was going to move on to next, is that international aspect of robotics. I mean, obviously, if you're playing baseball at Coconino High School, you're not going to travel further than Tucson unless you've got an out-of-state tournament during the season or during the off-season, which is more than likely not going to happen. But here in robotics, Coach Sapio, you were saying that you guys have competed against teams from Mexico. Obviously, you guys are traveling out of state to go to competition. Yep. We talk about some of the international aspect of robotics as well. Coach Thompson, I think you can answer a conspiracy theory. Coach Sapio and I have that sombrero on your wall, but you can't see right now, but it is behind Coach's shoulder. Coach Sapio said you got that as a gift from a team you guys competed against. They were from Mexico. Is that true? And also, like I mentioned, let's talk a little bit about that international tie-in.
Well, I think one of the things that really makes this program unique is that it's not strictly an us against them format. When you get two sports teams together, they're playing each other and they're trying to win one team against another team. That's the objective, right? You're trying to score as many points as you can, whether that's in baseball or basketball or whatever. When we compete, we go to competitions and they're 3 days long, and we could have anywhere from 40 to 64 teams competing at any one time. Now, the game is unique because we play on an alliance format. So you actually have 3 robots on the red alliance and 3 robots on the blue alliance. And those alliances are randomly assigned by the computer. We don't get to pick who we play with. So a team that we play against might be a team we play with later in the competition. So it's actually to everyone's benefit to have everyone's robot working as well as possible.
Right.
So in the same sense that you have scouts come and look at athletes, each team has scouts in the stands that are scouting the capabilities of each robot. And in each game, there's the opportunity, like Dave was saying, to try to rank yourself as high as possible. If you win a match, that ranks you higher than if you tie a match, or scoring certain objectives will also rank you higher. At the end of the tournament, the top 8 teams get to choose 2 alliance partners to go with them into the playoffs, and then you play a elimination style bracket to determine who the champion is. But it's a championship of 3 teams.
Okay.
So what's really cool about it is you get the chance to play with teams from all over the world. So we've traveled, teams have come to compete at the Sky Dome in Flagstaff from Turkey, from Mexico, from all over the United States, just to come here to Flagstaff, Arizona to compete. And then we, in turn, try to always take the CocoNuts to some of these out-of-state events. So we've traveled to California, we've traveled to Utah, we're traveling this year to Colorado, we've gone all the way to Idaho.
And a lot of times, though yet.
What's that?
Not out of the States though yet.
Not out of the States yet. Maybe someday if they we've always kind of told them that we would take them either to Hawaii or Australia if they win a particular award at the World Championship. We would take them there.
Very cool. And
that would be our only regional instead of
how exciting it must be. Like you said, you guys obviously have your scouts out there, so you kind of have an idea as to, okay, we might have to play with this team, so we know what their robot's capability is. But what an absolute wrench to throw in your plans. I mean, obviously, you don't do that in baseball. You're not scouting your 9 players on the field while they're playing for different teams. So a very, very interesting aspect to this particular version of robotics, where you're kind of really, the day of is when you find out how you're going to do. You have an idea, but you're really kind of figuring it out the day of. There were some other aspects about this. I want to talk more about the team. How many kids are competing? How do you guys decide who competes? Obviously, you can't have 400 kids on one team, so you got to break it down somehow. Are you guys an AIA sanctioned sport? Is it more of a club? Let's talk more about the building blocks of the team.
So our building blocks of the team is as you know, like with every other sport out there, not everyone's going to go out for football. Not everyone's going to play on the basketball team. It's just not their cup of tea. And we like to always think that we are a home for these other individuals that want to also compete. Now, we've had people that have, of all abilities and all walks of life on our team. And we have an open door policy that anyone can come in and compete as a CocoNut. They earn their right to be on the team. They have to, they earn that privilege in order to be able to actually go to a competition through that entire 8 weeks process of building a bot and doing the outreach and doing everything that encompasses our team called the CocoNuts. So we don't necessarily have tryouts. We don't have, all right, I'm going to have to cut these people. Have we had, we've had teams that have varied in size from as big as 35, 40 team members to as small as 7 when we started this program. So, we've been very fortunate in that sense. I would love to say that that we have enough members on the team that we would actually have to run 2 teams. I don't know if it's physically possible, definitely not mentally possible for us, but it would be wonderful to have that opportunity. But I guess the most amazing thing about it is we're developing people. Phil, the biggest thing I'm going to tell you, the robot is the catch. Kids love it. They want to do it. But it's about everything else that they have to do, that we have them compete. We have them talking to public officials. We have them talking to outreach and trying to get other kids excited about STEM education. You said it earlier. The bottom line is this world needs more people that are involved in STEM education, in STEM fields. And that's what these things are. Our kids, if I'm going to play on a football team or basketball, and I played basketball all the way up through college, I'm going to tell you, I didn't go pro in it. Would I wanted to? Maybe that was a dream or something. Bottom line is the reality is very, very, very few kids are going to have that opportunity.
And what's great is there's so much opportunity with STEM and with robotics. I mean, Coach Thompson, you just said it. There's obviously a lot of this area is very severely not only lacking in people, but just kids who are interested in STEM and robotics in general at the elementary to the high school level. I mean, I did basketball and baseball up until my sophomore and junior year of high school. After that, I didn't make the teams. I just wasn't good enough. There were kids who were taller and bigger than me. Sure. So I did theater. So I'm always a big fan and a big proponent of kids participating in anything organized, because you're right, Coach Thompson, not the robots and the machines. That's the hook. That's what gets them in. But realistically, you're learning problem solving. You're learning skill-based situations. You're learning a lot of math. You're learning a lot of engineering. You're learning how to work with the team, work with people you like, work with people you don't like. There's so much more than just really putting the ball into a hole. I mean, essentially, there's so much more to organized events and activities like this than just, sure, what's there on the base level. It's great. Season's kicked off for you guys January 8th.
It's so true. And the biggest thing?
Yeah, Coach.
Every one of my kids are going to go pro.
Are going pro.
I hope so. I really do.
And they can. That's the beauty. They all get to go pro. In fact, every one of our graduates, every one of them have gone on to university settings and have gone on to STEM fields within the university. And we have kids, and I'm not talking just going anywhere. We have kids going to Columbia University, Stanford, MIT, WPI, and they're going on full ride scholarships because of the program. How can I not do it?
No, you're right. It's great. And that's great to hear. That was one of my questions. Happy to hear that that's been answered. Yes, there are a lot of opportunities in robotics for anybody who might be listening, who knows somebody or who is somebody who, you didn't make the football team this year, but you love math or you're just interested in robotics in general. Give it a try. I'm sure your high school or your college or your elementary, your middle school, whatever, probably has a robotics program or something similar to it. For the past 2 years, you guys have been competing remotely because of COVID-19. We're doing the interview remotely, not because of COVID-19, but because Zoom has allowed us to do this interview. But I want to ask, what did that competition look like? I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of difficulties with competing remotely. Coach Thompson just said something. I was looking at my notes, but anyway, what did that remote competition look like? What did you guys learn in that time? Is there anything positive that came out of that, maybe from an operational standpoint, that you guys are implementing now?
Well, yeah. So I remember the date exactly. It was March 9th, 2020. We were supposed to be setting up for that big competition in the Sky Dome when the world melted down and they pulled the plug. And we had this beautiful robot that they had spent all this time building. And now all of a sudden it's all stopped and everybody's going home and everything. And now this robot is kind of sitting on a shelf. But we didn't stop. We didn't. Our kids, we asked, we said, hey, so I guess for the 2020 season, what they did is there's a number of awards that you submit ahead of time that really have absolutely nothing to do with the robot and have everything to do with your community impact. And the what you mentioned, that the 10-time winners of the Chairman's Award. Well, the Chairman's Award is actually the highest honor that you can win in this program. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the robot and everything to do with making the greatest measurable impact on your students, on your school, on your community. So we had already submitted those essays, as well as for the Dean's List, which recognizes outstanding students. And we were actually recognized. We had a Dean's List finalist, and we were fortunate enough to receive the Chairman's Award that year. The following year, for 2021, we sat down with the kids and we're like, we're still learning remotely. We can't meet in person. They're gonna basically come up with a series of kind of at-home challenges that you can do with your 2020 robot. Are you guys still interested in competing? And resoundingly, they said yes.
Good.
We still wanted to continue to be part of this. So basically, our robot had to do things like go through an obstacle course, like score as many points by shooting balls as it could into a target and stuff. And we had to video record those and then upload them to a system. And then the kids had interviews with some expert judges, some robot expert judges and everything. And they got to describe what their robot really did and everything. And then they still got to submit for those traditional, those higher awards, things like the Dean's List and the Chairman's Award again. And then they did a remote interview with it and everything. And once again, they were amazingly successful with that. We did some outreach events over Zoom. So we did a Zoom event with one of the local elementary schools here, where we taught them to code by having them make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Wow.
And and used that as a comparison to, it was really cool. And the kids came up with it. We did some rather remote kind of outreach events sort of things. We actually are the sponsoring organization for the First Tech Challenge program for the entire state of Arizona. And by we, I mean the kids, our students, run this program. And they created a grant program for teams that might have lost sponsors due to mom and pop businesses or local businesses pulling out due to COVID and losing some of the sponsorship and stuff. And they did, they met with their state legislatures over Zoom, and they met with their national legislators over Zoom to talk about why this program is so important.
That's good. Yeah, and they fought hard. Yeah,
they did. So they didn't give up. They didn't give up on their mission.
Thankfully here in 2022, I guess now, the season is officially kicked off. You were able to find out what the new game was recently.
Saturday.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about it. We'll have a visual component on it on our on Verde Valley TV if you want to check out what the specific game is. But Coach, this year's game is called Rapid React, and I want you to take it from there.
Well, Rapid React is a game sponsored by Boeing, and what they're doing is the kids have to design a machine that it meets certain constraints. 120 inches perimeter around, can be up to 4 feet tall, 120 pounds, and this machine has to collect what they call cargo, which are kind of like an oversized tennis ball, about 10 inches in diameter, and they have to be able to place these into a hopper situation up. That's 8 feet up in the air, and the balls have to be going in there. It also will be have a low goal that you can kind of that low, easier achievable goal that you can put them in at about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. So that there are only a limited number of these cargo on the field at any one time. They're different colors, as Christine was saying, a red alliance and the blue alliance, and they are scoring specific with those colors. During the first 15 seconds of the game, the robot has to do it autonomously, meaning that there's no control, no driver is doing it. It actually is doing it by sensors. And our kids have actually developed a vision program that it'll actually see the target, identify how far away it is based upon the size of the target on the image, and shoot at the appropriate speed so it can actually find it. Then go and look for these other balls of the right color, pick them up and shoot those. Then what will happen is then the drivers have to come up and actually drive the bot. And as they're driving it, collecting it, and scoring these points, then there's going to come into, and we're trying to get as much, as high as points as we possibly can as an alliance. And then at the end game, they've got to go and climb, in essence, no better word for it, a monkey bar set. Mm-hmm. It goes from 4 feet up to 5.5 feet, up to 6.5 feet, up to 7.5 feet high. And there are 3 feet, 2 feet, different spacing of these bars. And the robot's cannot just go up and grab one. It's got to traverse across all of them. Okay. How are we going to do it? I don't know. But
we're excited to get
figure it out.
Yeah, we're excited to find out what that answer is, Coach. Again, we're speaking with the coaches of the CocoNuts at Coconino High School. They are a first robotics team at Coconino High School, led by Christine Sapio and Coach Dave Thompson. I've just got one more question before we let you two go. I want to thank you both very much for coming on the program here. Where can kids go to learn more? If it's students at Coconino High School, where can people in general learn more about the CocoNuts? Is there a place where, if anyone's interested, if they could help support you guys in any way, what are all those details? Awesome.
For anybody interested in joining a team, statewide, region-wide, nationwide, worldwide, your first place to go is firstinspires.org. That's the website that houses all the information about the 3 different programs that, like we said, goes all the way down to age 4. Your kids can start participating in this program. To learn more about the CocoNuts, we have our own website. That's team2486.org. Or they can email either one of us. Like we mentioned earlier, we're actually run the program. We run the First Tech Challenge program for the state of Arizona. And we know all the coaches statewide and everything for all of those programs and things. And if your school doesn't have one, we know how to get one going. There's grants available, there's sponsorships available and everything. All you need is a couple of adults and some eager kids. Don't let the idea of robotics be intimidating to you. I personally don't really even have a background in mechanics or anything like that. I don't have a background in engineering, but here I am, very passionate about it and everything. You can see it changes lives. I really want to say that it absolutely changes these kids' lives. So we can for sure provide you with our email addresses and everything. If people are interested, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to help you get a team started.
Again, if you were looking for more, Coach Thompson, do you have something to say before we let go?
Yeah, I sure would. Coach Sapio, thank you so much for that. And remember, Philip, these type of programs, I'm going to let you know that our school it's not sponsored by the school in any way or any funding. The kids have to raise all the money. Yeah. It's very expensive. We run on thousands of dollars a year. We have to do this. Just to register our team, it costs $5,000 to play this game. It's very expensive. They just received their kit of parts, which is worth thousands and thousands of dollars, because they have software to SolidWorks and LabVIEW and all these different programs that the kids have to learn. So one of our biggest fundraisers that we do, it happens to be the Arizona tax credit. Yep. The tax credits is our salvation, as it is with many sports programs. And so I love all the listeners out there now. We would love and have the tax credits come to the CocoNuts. The CocoNuts. We have our own accounts within the FUSD, Flagstaff Unified School District, and our own accounts for that. And we can help, show you where the easiest way to help out sponsoring teams. And we would love to have anyone excited or just wants to know about, maybe help out with the kids and take them all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, Well, I want to thank you both again for coming on the show to talk about this wonderful program. Again, if you want more information just about FIRST Robotics in general, firstinspires.org is the website. If you want to help out or learn more about the CocoNuts, their website is team2486.org, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, Coach Sapio, thank you very much for coming on the program. Coach Thompson, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association, Rob McKinley, right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical, Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Gettle's High Desert Mechanical. I'm joined now by the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association, Rob McKinley. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Well, we're very happy to have you. Of course, the winter sports season is kind of getting close to the end as we're getting start for the beginning of the spring season, where we'll have baseball and softball. There are just some slight rule changes that we'll go over with Rob. But Rob, first and foremost, can we talk a little bit about what the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association is and how you guys function within the AIA?
Absolutely. So AZBOA stands for Arizona Baseball Officials Association, and we were formed in 2012 at the request of then Commissioner of Officials Gary Welchel. And he basically wanted a group of officials outside of the AIA official body to come up with a training group. And that's essentially what we do for AIA. We are the training arm for them for baseball. So we set up all the classroom curriculum and all the on-field curriculum for the umpires. And we're still under the guidance of the AIA Officials Committee. We're still under the guidance of the AIA Commissioner of Officials, Brian Gessner, but we do act a little bit independently as far as setting up the curricular that follows the NFHS guidelines for baseball.
Yeah, Rob, can we talk a little bit about that curriculum? I'm sure that question can kind of be blended into more of just the training that goes associated with umpires. So can we talk a little bit about some of the training and the curriculum that you guys put together when preparing an umpire for the season?
Sure. So from year to year, it's 99% the same or similar in that most of the rules don't change. And our mechanics really don't change. Maybe our philosophies might, or maybe there's a point of emphasis that's sent out by Federation or by AIA that, we want to focus on sportsmanship, or we want to focus on player safety. So we put together classroom training, and it's both in person and online, where the officials can either show up to a local meeting or they can tune in online, kind of like what we're doing now. And we'll go through the rules, we'll go through philosophies, we'll talk about how we're going to interpret a rule. A lot of times a rule can be convoluted and difficult to maybe understand what they're trying to do. So we'll talk about it, and as a group, we'll come to a general decision on how we're going to decide within the state. And then the final component for our training is on field, where we'll actually go on the field, and we won't necessarily talk about rules as much, but we will talk about mechanics. So maybe we have force play slide rule that we talked about in the classroom. Now we'll go talk about how, as an official on the field, we're going to put ourselves in the best position to officiate that play.
Now, we're going to get to the rule changes a little bit later, but there's only really one this year so far. There are some points of emphasis that we'll talk about here in just a second. But Rob, just off the top, let's just get this rule change out of the way because it's not necessarily a major change. It's kind of more minor. There was the NFHS Baseball Rules Committee put in place a rule change for the pre-pitch sequence, which Rob, if you can just kind of give us a brief overview as to what that rule change is, how it might affect the game this season. And then we'll talk about those points of emphasis that you brought up just a few minutes ago, and we'll talk about that afterwards. So what is this rule change we're expecting this season?
Certainly. So this rule change basically came about because of the change in technology and the way that coaches are communicating with their players on the field. And the rule used to say that the pitcher had to take his sign on the rubber from the catcher. And now we all know that most of the signals are via these little game cards that the teams will have. And the coach from the dugout will call out a numerical sequence. And that will then translate to a curveball, a fastball, or in location, or whatever it may be. And so the pitcher is turning into the dugout and looking, taking that signal sometimes, which by the letter of the law circumvented the rule, which said he must take it from the catcher. So this change basically says that the pitcher may take that signal from the dugout, but once he does that, he must simulate he's taking it from the catcher. And what that effectively is doing is it's protecting the batter, allowing him to get ready. So we prevent the pitcher from looking into the dugout, gets a signal, and then boom, he goes right away, and it in essence results in a quick pitch. So it's kind of a safety issue and also a technology where we're trying to merge the two. So they're allowed to take it from the dugout, but they must simulate as though they're taking it from the catcher.
So I do want to ask, there were obviously some points of emphasis mentioned as well, which aren't necessarily rule changes. They're just, my interpretation of is they were just kind of things for coaches and umpires to think about, one of which being excessive celebration. There was one regarding wearing proper equipment, sitting outside of dugouts. So I want to ask, Rob, obviously those aren't rule changes, but how do you guys utilize those points of emphasis? What do they specifically mean, and how do you guys implement them during the game?
Awesome. So that implementation actually starts preseason, and we start it both with the coaches and the officials. So AIA will have AZBOA put together a coach's presentation, and included in that presentation is the new rules changes and those points of emphasis. And we will tell the coaches in the presentation to them what our expectation is going to be and what our enforcement is going to be, so that before they start the season, they know exactly what will be expected of them and how the umpires are going to react to it from a state level. From the officials' perspective, we do the exact same thing. We say, hey, Federation has given us some guidelines on some things that aren't being handled properly from a national perspective, not necessarily from a state perspective, but from a national perspective. And so we will go into that same kind of detail where we're going to say, this is going to be our philosophy. This is how we're going to handle it. And we expect every umpire to do it each and every time.
Now, when you guys get a rule change from the NFHS or any other kind of, obviously, we're seeing the shot clock rule for basketball now be implemented in Arizona. When I was playing high school basketball in California, we already had the shot clock. So I want to ask, Rob, maybe this would be a better question for Brian Gessner, but I'm curious, when you guys get a rule change from the NFHS, does the AIA have any kind of decision if they want to adopt it? Do they automatically have to adopt it? What breaks down with that when there's a new rule change? How does that work?
Absolutely. So when there's a rule change, each state should follow the Federation rules. And if they don't follow those rules that are written as a rule, then there's a chance that they can lose. I don't know if it's called a charter or membership or whatever it is, but there's a possibility that you might not be sanctioned by Federation, which would be a really bad thing. So if it's a rule change, the state of Arizona is going to absolutely follow it. And within the rule book, there are certain things that Federation says, okay, we're going to give you a broad guideline. You get to decide how firm of a guideline. For example, game-ending procedures. We have game-ending procedures in almost, at least in basketball, football, and baseball. 42 points in football, 30 points in basketball, 10 runs in baseball. So Federation doesn't mandate that specific rule. They allow us to decide. But if they say, hey, Rule 6.6 is running out of the baseline, well, then we have to enforce that as written. We can come up with our philosophies on how to do it, but in order to be sanctioned by Federation, we must follow the rule book as written.
Again, we were speaking with Rob McKinley. He is the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association. Like I mentioned, we're getting close to the start of softball, baseball season. So, Rob, I want to ask, I mentioned those points of emphasis early on. One of them had regarded excessive celebration. Obviously, you have a lot of experience as an umpire. We'll get into your background here in just a little bit. But I want to ask, how do you gauge that excessive celebration? I mean, I feel like it's been a topic that's been bouncing around the high school level, college, professional. There's the NFL had an issue with a lot of guys celebrating in the end zone. Obviously, you don't want a kid screaming and taunting, when he gets a strikeout or he gets a base hit. But there is that sort of fine line that you walk from excitement to taunting. So I want to ask, as an umpire, when you're trying to gauge that, what are you looking for? How do you discern sort of somebody who's excited about something and somebody who's clearly trying to make the other team understand about, make a fool of themselves, I guess is what I'll say.
Sure, absolutely. And that is an absolute directive from AIA for all sports and also baseball, that we will promote sportsmanship at all times. And that's part of our pregame talk when we either talk at a captain's meeting or we have in our sport, we have a plate meeting. We will mention, hey, sportsmanship at all times. And with that, we're expected ourselves to promote sportsmanship. We're expected to act fairly and firmly. And so in regard to your question, how do I determine between, is it celebration or is it excessive celebration, which is taunting? And for me, if it's directed at the opponent, whether it be a comment, you and I could be talking, but I could say, hey, they suck, right? Or we're killing them. Well, now I'm talking about the other team. There's a difference versus I say, hey, that's a great job. You hit a home run. I'm very excited. So we have to understand, and I think people do, that there's going to be that moment of elation and joy because you just succeeded on the field, and we're going to allow that. But when it becomes abusive to the other team or it becomes excessive and prolonged, well, now we need to start addressing it as officials.
I do want to ask, though, what about bat flips? I mean, obviously in baseball, the bat flip has become a very, very popular thing. Again, a sort of fine line you have to walk of flipping the bat after a big home run and looking at your dugout and flipping the bat and looking at the opposing pitcher or the opposing dugout. So does that also kind of fall into that same jurisdiction of, okay, where is this aggression or where is this excitement directed towards when it regards stuff like that?
Absolutely. Okay. And it goes to sportsmanship. It goes to taunting. And in baseball, we actually have a rule that talks about throwing a bat in a dangerous, careless manner can be grounds for ejection. Hopefully, as officials in Arizona, we are going to try and manage that as best we can and get ahead of it. Again, depending on how egregious that act is, how egregious that bat flip is, maybe it's a talk to, maybe it's a, hey, you got to get running. Let's go. Don't do that again. And as he comes in and scores, we talk to the head coach. Hey, we can't have that. We don't want that. That's not promoting our sportsmanship like we all talked about. And if it's something that's really, really egregious and possibly dangerous, well, then that could be an ejection. But again, hopefully we're able to manage the situation and get the best outcome that's fair for both teams.
Just one more before we finish up our conversation regarding the rules, Rob. Do you think that we're going to see any other rule changes coming up? I know we're getting closer to the start of the season. Have you heard any talks about some potential rule changes we might see down the line? Any conversations getting started about some things you guys are looking at to potentially change? Can we expect anything going forward potentially?
Absolutely. So I'm actually lucky enough to be on the NFHS National Rules Committee. So every year I get to participate in the rules changes as far as making decisions. Every state has the option at the end of the season to send out a questionnaire, and Arizona does it, sends it out to the officials and says, hey, what do you feel like needs to be changed? And the officials get input into what they feel like needs to be changed. And then that comes to the state board, which I'm on, and we decide, okay, we're going to take all those answers and we're going to send 2 or 3 and send them to Federation. And the Federation kind of funnels them even further and they start deciding on what they want to change. Absolutely. They're always looking to improve their game. They're always looking to modernize their game. And they're always looking to protect their participants. I know from my perspective, there are 2 rules that I have pushed for change. And one would be the balk and the obstruction. In my opinion, the way that high school does the balk rule and also the obstruction rule, I don't think that those are necessarily equitable to both teams. They favor one team and they favor the team that just committed the infraction, unfortunately. Right. But yeah, there's always going to be changes. In fact, we just had a meeting the other day about the mechanics manual. So we're looking at changing the mechanics manual. But specific tangible ones, there's nothing on the table right now.
Okay. We talked about the training a little bit here, Rob, and I kind of want to go more into that. So we already kind of broke down some of the training that you can expect when you start as an AIA umpire, but what are some areas that, a newer umpire might struggle in? I mean, obviously some people have experience playing the sports, they officiate, some don't. When you get somebody who comes into the sport brand new, maybe they never played baseball, maybe they played t-ball once, but they're coming into the sport brand new. How do you teach them the rules while also allowing them or teaching the rules in a way where not only they understand the rules, but they also understand how the game works and they understand the sort of basics of baseball?
Absolutely. Anytime you play a sport, I think you have an advantage, and it might not be a huge one, but it's a little bit of an advantage because you understand a little bit more about what's to come. And the same thing that if you are an AIA basketball official and you're going to go and do AIA football, well, now you have an advantage over that brand new football official, even though you may not know the rules, you may not know the mechanics, but you know how AI operates and what's to be expected. So for that new baseball official, we're going to have a two-pronged approach. And one is the classroom, where we're going to get in and we're going to delve into the rule book. And that classroom is very different, but very similar to what the classroom is for the varsity official. We're going to cover the same material. It's just that we're going to go at a much slower pace, much more in depth. And then we get on the field. And when we get on the field, we're going to start with the absolute basics. We're going to say, this is where you're going to stand when you come out. This is where you're going to stand for the plate meeting. This is what you're going to say during the plate meeting. And then once the game starts, this is how you're going to take a play at first base. And when runners are on base, this is where you're going to be in our different positions. We have an A position, a B position, and a C position. And depending on the runner combinations, you have to go into a different position each time. So we'll break it down for them at the very basic level. Again, just to try to put them in the best position of success that we can, because we understand they're brand new.
You never really think about the positioning of the umpires on the field and that how big and important that particular rule or positioning is. Obviously, you want to have the best vantage point to see the play clearly, but you never really, I never really thought that you guys didn't put any effort into it, but I didn't know it was that much of an emphasis where genuinely there were different positions for the umpires at first, third, in the field, behind the plate. So we're all learning a little bit more here, but I want to ask, we keep talking about new umpires. What are some areas that younger umpires struggle in, regardless of experience level?
Sure. The one that jumps out at me is the retention, and we don't retain umpires. So at our meetings, we'll say, hey, the brand new umpire, stand up, and we'll have 15 or 20 of them. And we'll say second year umpire, stand up, and we'll have 3 of them. So why don't we have 15? Why don't we have 10? So we are not retaining umpires. And I think the main reason is because of the way that officials are treated on the field by the fans. And the fans have become very aggressive, very boisterous, it's aggressive. It's not the way I grew up, and maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know, but it has changed, and it's much more adversive to the official. And I think that as that changes and the mindset of the new official changes, that's just a bad combination, and the officials just don't want to take it. It's just not worth it to them.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I mean, obviously, as a broadcaster, you have those moments where, a call goes one way or it doesn't look a certain way. I mean, I know as a broadcaster not to get too egregious on air, because what's said in the stands can only be heard by so many people, but what's said over air is heard by everyone. So, I feel for these umpires when you've got these, and it's not just the parents. I mean, coaches as well, players as well. Everybody can be difficult. PA. I've been on baseball games where the PA announcer got ejected. I mean, there's a lot of. I agree. I think there's a little bit more of an aggressive approach when it comes to, just kind of how the position of umpire is received. We all know a good umpire. We all know a bad umpire. But at the end of the day, of course, they're human beings, and they're all just trying to do a job, just like myself.
Absolutely. There's not one official that I've ever met or known that walked on the field and wanted to fail. They're competing just like those players are. They're competing for their peers. They're competing for AIA, and they're competing for both teams to get every play right. They don't want to screw up a play, and we're human beings. We make really good calls, and there are occasions when we make bad calls, and we have to own up to those and live with it.
You've been an AIA official since 2006. I want to ask Rob, what mistakes did you make early on in your career when you started as an umpire, or even before when you were officiating other sports?
Absolutely. So, my learning curve was really big, because I didn't start officiating baseball until I was 41, and I'm 58 now. So I'm at the end of my career, and I wish I'd started sooner, but because I was older, I had to shove it in fast. I wanted to be good. I wanted to go to Division I baseball. I wanted to work junior college baseball. I wanted to work high school state championships. So I had to go really fast. So that was not the best conditions. I would, again, if I started when I was 21 or 22 or 25, and you can take your time and you can learn as you go along, but I just didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's a big mentorship aspect to umpires. I use the term brotherhood very loosely because it doesn't necessarily pertain to just one gender. I mean, the brotherhood term is just kind of for everybody. But I want to ask, how important is that sort of mentorship and that sort of just, you've got somebody to lean on, you've got, in a lot of cases, it's 3 umpires against 1,000, or it's, 2 umpires against, 500, whatever it may be. The crowd's always going to outman the umpires, but you guys are kind of in a battle on yourselves. You're in a battle with trying to get the calls right, also dealing with multiple different things. So how important is it to kind of rely on your fellow umpire and build those relationships as you're continuing your career?
Absolutely. And you use the word brotherhood, I'll use the word community. And it's both of those things. It's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a community. It's extremely important for officials. Just like you said, there are 3 teams for every contest. There's the visiting team, the home team, and then there's the officials. And we're not necessarily competing against them. We're competing for them, but we have to be a team. And that team, it's important for our community, for that team not to just be on that game or to be for that region. It needs to be for that state. It needs to be for that group. So as baseball umpires, it's very important to us, and we promote it. We talk about it a lot in our meetings, that we need to support each other. In fact, we have a code of conduct that talks about all these different things. And one of them flat out says is that I will not talk poorly about my fellow official to anybody else. I may talk to him directly in the way that we would want it to be handled properly, professionally, but I will not talk publicly about him. So there are times when we have really good community, and there's times when we don't have really good community. But it's very important for our group to be successful, that we support each other. So that's how we get retention. Part of that retention is having mentorship and sharing what I've learned with somebody else, because somebody before me taught me, and I need to teach someone else. So we have a phrase, and we talk about that we're going to honor the ones that came before us, and we're going to mentor the ones that came after us.
That's a great saying. I love that. But I want to ask, you talk about, some of your early struggles. You kind of mentioned that you had a mentor. Obviously, I'm sure there's been multiple umpires and officials who have come your way and kind of helped you along your journey. So Rob, I want to ask, do you have a specific person or maybe a few specific people that, you kind of leaned on when you got started? And even now, since you're in a little bit more of a higher up position, is there anybody that you kind of want to just not necessarily shout out, but just talk about how their mentorship helped you in your newer career change?
Oh, absolutely. So for me, my progression as an amateur, I didn't go to professional baseball school. I didn't work in the minor leagues or in the big leagues. Everything I've done is as an avocation. And so I have these different levels. And so at club baseball, I had a partner that helped me, and we worked together a lot and worked, 500 games a year. At high school, I had a partner, Roger Hale. We worked together and mentored. And at junior college, Jason Rogers, Jeff Macias, Steve Manning, there's all these different people. It's an endless amount. And then you get to Division I. It's the same way. Dave Yates is a coordinator of officials for Division I in the Pac-12, and he has mentored a huge amount of people, including myself. So it is very important, and I try and emulate that, and I want to give back twice as much as what I got. I fail at it sometimes, but I certainly want to do that.
Well, Rob, you've like I mentioned, Rob McKinley. Again, he is the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association. Been an AIA official since 2006, called a lot of memorable games. Just a few to name: the 2007 4A state championship, the 2010 5A state championship, and the 2013 Division I championship. So if your kids were participating in that game and you got a bad call, now you know who to go to. But no, I'm kidding. But Rob, I want to ask,
there may have been.
I'm sorry.
There may have been one or two.
I'm sure there is. You're not perfect. We just talked about that, but please don't harass Rob McKinley. That was a joke. But anyway, Rob, I want to ask, you've gotten experience at the collegiate level, at the high school level. What's more difficult to umpire at the high school level or the collegiate level?
So again, I don't care personally. My opinion is I don't care if it's a little league game, a Babe Ruth game, a junior high game, a high school game, a junior college game, a Division I game. If they all matter, they all matter to those two teams playing. Obviously, the higher up in levels you go, there's a little more pressure. There's more fans. You're paid a higher stipend to go out and perform. So therefore there's more pressure that way. But they all matter. And I think every official takes it the same way, in that every game to us, we're going to treat it the same, as though it's a championship for someone, whether it be for last place or first place. We're going to treat it the same and go out and perform the best we can.
Any other memorable games? Have you gotten to see any walk-offs or no-hitters? Any fun ejection stories at all?
So I'm not really an ejection person. I don't have a lot of them. I believe in holding people accountable, and including myself. So I try and work my games from that perspective. Memorable games. I had a 16 inning plate job this past year at Cal State Fullerton. That was very memorable because it was over 5 hours. It's the longest game I've ever had on the plate. You talked about the 2007 state championship. I remember that one because it was Coronado beat Notre Dame 20-8. So it was like you go into this game with all these high expectations, and you're focused and you're laser sharp, and then it's 20 runs are scored. So that was kind of anticlimactic. A walk-off, the best walk-off I've had was in the Junior College World Series. It was in an early round game. The home team was losing by 3 runs, and they had the bases loaded, and they bunted with nobody out. They bunted the ball back to the pitcher. They're just trying to get a run to come in. They bunt the ball back to the pitcher, and at the end of that play, they won the game 4-3. So they scored all 4 3-run because the other team threw the ball away about 7 times. So
oh my gosh,
yeah, pretty crazy.
Well, I wish I had caught that game. That's fascinating. Rob, real quick, I know umpires and officials are needed from the AIA. I wanted to make sure we get this in before we let you go. Where can people go for information about becoming an AIA? Oh my goodness, becoming an AIA official, or just an official in general?
Sure. Anyone can email me. My email information is on azboa.org. You can also go to aiaonline.org. Or you can, if you're at a game, stop and ask that official, say, hey, I'm interested in signing up, and that official can get you hooked up as well. So we need people. We want to continue to give back to our community and have these sports be prosperous, and have our young men and women be able to compete and learn about life and through the avenue of sports.
He is the head of the Arizona Baseball Umpires Association, Rob McKinley. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate you having me.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Off the Bench. I'd also like to thank the CocoNuts for coming on the program as well. I'm Philip Katafama, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you again next time.